Reddit Ask Me Anything. Former bank robber here. Ask me anything. I did this Ask Me Anything 4 years ago and this Ask Me Anything 2 years ago. In keeping with the every 2 years pattern, I'm here for a third, and likely final, Ask Me Anything. I'm not promoting anything. Yes, I did write a book, but it's free to Redditors, so don't bother asking me where to buy it. I won't tell you. Just download the thing for free if you're interested. As before, I'll answer questions until they've all been answered. Aside from your freedom and robbing banks, what's the one thing you missed the most about the outside while you were in the clink? Hugs. I've never been in jail or prison, but I miss these too. How did the other prisoners treat you when they heard you are a bank robber? There's a weird level of respect that the guys inside have for bank robbers. I don't know why, but that's just the way it is. They're fascinated with it just like anyone else. Probably because in American history some of the most notorious villains were bank robbers. Not really notorious, they are almost glorified in American pop culture. Bonnie and Clyde, Pretty Boy Floyd, Jesse James, John Dillinger, Babyface Nelson, Butch Cassidy, the list goes on. Being rejected by Amazon after being recruited by Amazon. I get the feeling you want to talk about this. What happened with Amazon? I'm betting he applied, got through the interview process, went for the background check, and the hiring process ended there. But that's just a swag. Pretty much. Got through to orientation and all that stuff. They called a few days before my first day and basically said never mind. The most annoying part was that I spoke openly at every step, from the recruiter to the person who interviewed me and then the person who led orientation, about my criminal history and asked if I was wasting my time. Amazon will still sell my book. I just can't work at the place that ships it to you. From what I read about working at Amazon, maybe it was for the best. What rules did you have about engagement during robberies? Presence of kids? Violence? No violence. Just walked in and acted as a regular customer. When it was my turn, I handed the teller a note saying to give me their $50 and $100. I typically clarified that I didn't have a weapon or any intention of hurting them. Fill out a robbery form and go to the back of the line. And that worked. If someone handed me a note like that, I definitely wouldn't take it seriously. Edit. Considering how seriously people are taking this comment, I thought I should add that I am not being literal. I found it funny that all he did was hand over a non-threatening note, in his case, specifically, and that's all you technically need to do to rob a bank. It's bank policy to comply. Yes, this is true. I spent a few years as a teller and this point was brought up in training often. Do not resist the robber. Funny story though. We had a teller in her 80s who had worked for the bank almost 40 years. She was a tough old German lady and I loved her like a grandmother. One day, as she was going to lunch, a man approached her window and handed her a note as she was putting her next window. Please sign up. She said, sorry, sir. I have clocked out for my lunch break and can't help you. You will have to wait in line with the others. The man looked utterly confused and ended up leaving instead of waiting in line. She's no longer with us. She passed of natural causes a year or so ago. But I feel like this story captures her spirit so well. You can take the bank's money, but I'll be damned if you take my lunch break. Is there a bond between bank robbers in prison? Like, do you guys swap stories and become friendly because you're in for the same thing? Oddly, yes. I imagine it's no different than people who've played the same sport or can play the same musical instrument. Have you ever considered doing a podcast? Especially since your book says you have a lifelong best friend that grew up to be a cop. I can just see this storyline of an ex-bank robber and an ex-cop, neither of who see eye to eye with societal norms of what they're expected to be like, being something that people couldn't turn off. Especially if both you guys are funny. Something to think about. I mean, I'd subscribe. Yes, and that friend wants to be. LOL. I just realized who that was. You ducking idiot. Now I want to listen to it. Has the podcast got a name yet? No, that's my best friend. He's been wanting to do a podcast for a while now. We need this. If you've got the money, I've got the time. Cops and Robbers, 10/10 would Patreon. Are there any strange weird moments that stood out to you during your robberies? Like, things you remember but aren't sure why. Maybe the exact outfit a customer was wearing or something. While waiting in line during the first robbery I did, there was a girl standing in front of me. She had a great butt. Somewhere out there is a girl who doesn't know that a bank robber complimented her butt. With better social skills, I might have introduced myself to her and skipped the whole robbery altogether even. I would love to know how that convo would go. What brings you to the bank today? OP was looking to make a withdrawal but now thinking about making a deposit. That's crass, and probably ineffective at best. But what do I know? I'm still single. LOL agreed, and I wouldn't bank on it working. At what point did you have the thought, I might have ducked up? I've never quite fully felt that way, frankly. Over the course of your entire career, how much did you make? Not very much. Probably like 5 figures. At that point I feel like it's just easier to work for the bank, LOL. Mother ducker. That's called a job. I recognize this. Hilarious. What movie do you think is a realistic heist movie? I mean, from planning to execution to aftermath. I don't think any of them are very realistic. Hollywood doesn't really do realism all too well. It's like asking which porn is the most realistic. By default, the professional movies are all a bit fantasy. If I had to pick, I'd say Office Space is probably the most realistic. Well, if that's what gets you off. But I had sex once and it was nothing like Office Space. What's the biggest thing entertainment gets wrong about bank robbing? How much money you get? Well, everyone that I know who robs banks only does it for the passion, not the money. Get paid for your passion and you'll never work a day in your life. What types of prisons were treated the best and worst by fellow inmates and prison guards? Worst equals sex offenders. Best equals everybody else. I've heard some terrifying stories about what they do to more specifically rapists and pedophiles. Sucks to suck. How difficult is it really to rob a bank and get away with it? Who organizes the whole operation? Not very. The only person involved, if they're smart. Right. You don't often hear about the people that got away with it in the long term. My favorite one was the dude dressed as Santa robbing a bank in SF during SantaCon. I never did hear if he got caught, which is usually a sign that he got away with it. This is my favorite bank robbery story. End Wikipedia org link. TL. A guy posts a construction job on Craigslist and tells people to bring a yellow vest, blue shirt, respirator mask and safety goggles. A crowd of dudes show up while he robs a bank. Dressed in that exact outfit, he slid away in an inner tube down a creek and floated away to his getaway car. And caught because a homeless guy saw him, if I recall correctly. Crazy story. What was going on in your head when you were robbing banks? Was it a huge adrenaline rush? Were you scared? Nervous? I would like to know what goes on when you commit a crime like that. Thanks. It felt a bit like riding a roller coaster. There's a sense of danger, but ultimately, it was safe enough to check out. It's obviously riskier than riding a roller coaster, but that's the best analogy I can make. It was crazy, and it was scary, but to some, that's what makes life fun. I'll have to check it out then. This comment right here, officer. I just invest in Tesla. It's the same thing really. What was the closest call for you, where you actually got away with whatever you were doing? Probably the last one. The lady teller kinda freaked out and started screaming to lock the doors. It was a tad stressful to say the least, but I managed to just turn around and walk out as though nothing were happening. They did lock the doors, but it was just after I'd walked out. I don't think the intent was to trap me there, so it's not like I barely got away in that sense, but it was still way too close for comfort. That was the end of it for me. Was there any backup plan for it? You were locked in? Or would you resign yourself to your fate? I did have a small ball-peen hammer just under my pants. That is, below the knee. Not making a dong joke there. Worst case scenario, I could have tried to beat my way out. I have no idea if that would have worked, but there would have been an attempt. It doesn't matter if you weren't making the joke. The joke makes itself and there's nothing you can do about it. What was prison actually like? Is that where you got your tattoos? Nah, I got all my tattoos before prison. How did you stay in the 9th grade for 3 years? I didn't do the work, so I didn't earn the credit. For all of my life prior to that, the school always passed me because they knew I was smart enough for the next grade even though I never did any work to prove it. But in high school, you actually have to earn it, which I didn't. Something tells me this tray and the bank robbing have some kind of connection. If I drove say 800 miles away from where I live to a city 2 states away, and I only robbed one bank, what are the odds I would get caught? That's an 800-mile drive back. Imagine heat but for 800 miles. I'd rather deal in percentages than odds. Ratios have always bothered me a bit. Officially, I'd estimate a 60% failure rate for the scenario you've described. Don't do it. E1. I like your username. E2. Check the comment chain below for the exact reason I avoid odds. In actuality, I know WTF I'm talking. Whether it be odds, fractions, or percentages. I was just making a joke. 60% of the time it fails every time. 100% of the time it fails 60% of the time. Better odds than we usually get. Alright, let's do this. Leroy Jenkins. Do you think the sentence fitted the crime? Number. I think I got less time than I deserved. I'm forever grateful that the judge had something better in mind for me. I've never spoken with him or heard his point of view in detail, but I definitely don't think I got what I deserved. In hindsight, it worked out for the better. Maybe I'm wrong about how many years I deserved or whatever, but I still feel like I got a shit ton of mercy in all of that. You should send the judge a letter. They rarely get anything like that, and it might really be appreciated, especially to see that you've capitalized on the chance you were given. So now that you've been out of incarceration, what are you doing for a job and finding a way to make ends meet? Does being a former convict and listed as a bank robber deter you from certain jobs and all that as well? I worked the first job I could get after first getting out. I worked there, production related work, for just over a year before getting a job in the oil and gas industry. I worked there for a few years and then got out because of an injury. There are definitely certain jobs I can't do these days because of my past. For example, bank teller is probably out of the question. The law doesn't provide for discriminating against ex-cons, but most corporations still do exactly that. For the records, I support a company's right to not hire someone based on their past. I actually wish the laws were a little different there because there's just a shit ton of wasted time going into looking for a job because you think things are fair when they're really not. I'd much rather a company be able to proudly boast, hey I. Keep your former criminal ass away from us, because I would do exactly that and look for the former felony friendly companies instead. Should get a job testing escape rooms. Based on his earlier comment about a ballpeen hammer, maybe not. I'm not fully read up on your story, but was your history of crime gradual in smaller offenses, or did you go directly to the bank robbery? What could those around have done to prevent this path? The worst crime I'd ever committed prior to the bank stuff was probably stealing candy from a store as a child. There was an incident in my mid-20s where I filed a fraudulent police report saying that someone had stolen my identity. But I don't know how illegal it was since I was pretty vague about the whole thing. Good question. I wish I had something more interesting to say about it. Jumping from stealing candy to robbing banks seems like a rather large leap. Was this out of desperation and/or circumstances? What's your favorite candy? Hang on just one second there, buddy boy. We're asking the questions around here. What's your favorite candy? Why did you file the fraudulent reports in the first place? And did you get caught? My mom had a certificate of deposit at the bank that was also in my name. I withdrew the money when it matured and then tried to deny it was me. The surveillance showed otherwise, but the quality was bad enough that I don't think they could tell it was me. Maybe they could, I don't know. At any rate, I denied it was me, and part of that official denial was going to the police and participating in their paperwork. So you took money from a bank and claimed it wasn't you. Your pre-bank robbery crime is actually bank robbery. Well, when you put it like that, I am satisfied with this answer and also this Ask Me Anything. I am satisfied with this comment and also your username. Hello Clay, I've got a few questions for you. How difficult is it to get contraband in prison? How do you get it in? Did the prison system succeed in helping you change your ways? And finally, is it true that Baskin Robbins always finds out? Wish you all the best with your days ahead. As long as there are prison guards, it will be easy to get contraband into prison. They've got the market on that shit. The prison system is trash. It doesn't work. First rule of Baskin Robbins is, never mind. Wrong joke. Thanks. As long as there are prison guards, it will be easy to get contraband into prison. They've got the market on that shit. Isn't that just plain corruption? Yes, that's exactly what it is. Welcome to the American prison system. What was your favorite bank to rob? Chase. Why? That's not as easy of a question to answer. It's probably just a familiarity thing. I also prefer Chevy to Ford, but that's only because my dad drove Chevy trucks most of my childhood. I was really confused when he got a Ford later in life. I don't really know what to think now. My gut says Chevy, but my brain says it doesn't matter. If anything, Ford should probably be my preference, but who knows? Chase it is. Paging Chevy Chase. Why did you opt for bank robbery over just a bunch of smaller, easier robberies? To me, the bank robberies were smaller, easier robberies. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. Thanks for watching, mate. Make sure to smash that like button and subscribe for more high quality content.